Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome again to Torah with your host, Rabbi Anibal. We are back after the winter break. I mean, winter is still there, don't get me wrong, but we call it winter break. And yeah, and here we are starting Torah once again. Ready with my coffee. It's only a single shot right now because I already had two lattes early in the morning and I didn't want to over caffeinate myself. So welcome. Let's see who is here. Let me go back to the chat to the very beginning. Rocky Pollack is here, nice and early. Very nice. Shelly Chochinov, David Grossman, Ariel Lee, Brenda Grossman, Julia Trisler, and yeah. Well, David, I miss you guys too. Yeah, it's I love the group. I love Trolleheim, and yeah, here we are again. A lot. Hello, Galia Ben Simon. Welcome. Uh, a lot happened since the last class that we had together, and you probably follow the news. We had graffitis outside with some swastikas and some not nice things that they painted outside our synagogue. They did it also with a local high school that is a block away from Shari Zedek. But you know what? Nothing new for the Jewish people at the end of the day. Nothing new. We deal with this, unfortunately, in every generation, and nothing ever has stopped us. Here we are. Here we are. And stronger than ever. So when I come to the office and I see people studying Torah despite everything that is going on around, and said, we are doing well. Because this is all around. This is all about, right? Nothing will deter us from studying Torah. And in this day and age, even distance is not even a problem, an issue anymore. We have the internet. We have many ways to connect with each other, to strengthen each other, and to move forward together. So thank you for being there, and cheers. If you have your coffee, your tea, your hot chocolate, this is the time. This is the time. As I mentioned before, I had some technical difficulties. For some reason, the software that I use, the way it works, I prepare my class on PowerPoint, and then I upload the PowerPoint to this portal that we use, and then the portal will convert that PowerPoint into the slides that I use for the class. But for some reason, it's not working, the conversion, so it keeps looping, and nothing else. So I'm trying here to use a different way. I don't know if I can make that work. I'm going to do my best. Let's see if I have somehow a way to do it. You'll see in a minute what I'm talking about. Okay, you'll see in a minute. But so far, Ari Litvak is here. Welcome, Ari Litvak. Yeah, I have you here, buddy. I had technical difficulties. Usually, I remember the days when I used to help your Kehila, but now I need help to make this thing of Restream work because it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Welcome to my dear colleague and cantor Ari Litvak, all the way from Mexico City. You know, Ari, many people from here, they know your work and they admire you as well. So great to see your name here. And I'm going to go to the next thing. You see, you can kind of see at the top what I'm talking about, that I'm sharing it differently. Let me try one more time to see if I can do it differently. Oh, I think it was fixed. Yeah, it fixed it. I can go back to this. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Okay. So I will quit here then. Yeah, I did it. I did it. It took longer, but I did it. It wasn't my fault. It was Restrain's fault. And yeah. Okay. So we are going to study. We are going to study today about this week's parsha, of course. Parshat Shemot is a new book of the Torah. It's the second book. In English, you call it Exodus, because it's telling the story of the Exodus. And you know that when we refer to the names using the Hebrew name, usually the names of the book comes from either the first, the second, or the third word of the first verse. some people will call it the most prominent word within the first verse. And that's why we call it Shemot, because the parshas are Ele Shemot. And these are the names. It doesn't tell you much about what the book is going to talk about. But in English, instead of focusing on the beginning of the book, the names represent the main topic of the whole book. So, for example, first book of the Bible, Bereshit, Genesis, about the same, because the book talks about the beginning of the world, the creation of the world, so it's about the same. The second one is Shemot in Hebrew, names, but in English is Exodus, because the main topic of the second book is the story of the Exodus. Now, if you go to the third book, is Vayikra, and he called, because at the beginning of the third book, God calling Moses. But in English, it's Leviticus, because it mostly talk about the responsibilities of the Levites and the priests, which even though we call the priests Kohanim, they were still coming from the tribe of Levi. That's why the name of the book. Then the fourth book is, in English, is the book of Numbers. Why? Because it's talking about the census. It's the first time that there is a big counting of the Jewish people, because remember, up to that point, God was the one providing all the information. The book of Numbers, now the people of Israel, we have to take responsibility of organizing and analyzing the census that they were going to have to do. I don't know how often you have census in your countries. In Canada, is every 5 years, and the next one is going to be this year on May. That's the next census in Canada. How do I know that? Is because I have a bat mitzvah student. She has to talk about the book of Numbers, and her bat mitzvah is on May. So we figure out that the next census is on May, the month of her bat mitzvah. She's going to talk about that during her Devar Torah, her speech. I think it's a very cool thing that she's reading a book talking about numbers, and the next census is going to be within the month of her bat mitzvah. So very cool. Now, in Hebrew, the fourth book is called Bamidbar, which means in the desert. Why? Because that's the beginning of the book. Things that happen during their staying at the desert of Sinai. So that's why. And then the last one is Devarim, which could be translated as things or sayings. Things or sayings. That in Hebrew, the word dabar could be something that you say or a thing. Two things in Hebrew. In English, it's called Deuteronomy. And I think it has to do with all the repetitions that the fifth book contains. Things that were said before in the Torah, but Moses is going to repeat everything. So there you have the 5 books of the Torah. But now let's go to this week's Parsha. And I want to talk about something very interesting about the life of Moses. People usually, when they study the book of Exodus, specifically the beginning, it's all about the life of Moses. And we usually talk about Moses in the palace, and when Moses challenged and then eventually killed an Egyptian that was harassing a Hebrew slave and stuff like that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Pharaoh's daughter and what she did. Because remember what happened, there was a decree from Pharaoh that all the baby boys have to be killed by drowning. I know it's terrible, something unthinkable in the 21st century. Well, unthinkable in North America, right? Because otherwise I think some people may disagree that it may be totally thinkable in other parts of the world, okay? I know that there are some people that in the Middle East that they wish they could go back to this with all the Jewish people, right? So unthinkable, quotation marks. But yeah, it was terrible. it was terrible, the decree. So we know that Moses' family tried to save baby Moses by putting it into a basket and place the basket on the Nile River. Moses' sister was keeping an eye on the basket to keep the baby safe. But what happened is, while the basket was there on the Nile, Pharaoh's daughter decided to go to the river to that exact location to take a bath there. So let me read now from the book of Exodus, chapter 2, verse 5. It says, "The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe in the river while her maids in attendance walked along the riverside. Now, spotting the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it." Okay, can you imagine this? You know, we have to use a little bit of our imagination to understand what the rabbis are talking about this, right? Looks like the basket wasn't close to the shore where she was. There probably was some kind of rope tying the basket, so the basket will be a little bit further away from the shore. Maybe it was more difficult to spot. I don't know. But she saw it, so she sent the maid to get it. And it's interesting here because what we are going to see is the word that the Torah used for maid is amata. So the Torah said, "Vatishlach et amata vatikaheha." Okay? Amata is the maid. But it is very interesting that amata also comes from the word amot or amma, that it means arm length. In fact, there is a unit of measure that is mentioned in rabbinic literature that is amot. Same root, same spelling. Amot. Amot, they would say would say something. It would be 5 amot, and that is related to the length of an arm. So 5 amot will be 5 times an arm length. And I know you say, how can you calculate the arm length? Back in the day, measurements were mostly approximated. Okay, so yeah, it will be from the elbow all the way to the end of the hand, and that will be, so people will walk like a robot, moving the arms, calculating 5, for example, amot, and so forth. They have different measures that in this day and age will be ridiculous, because everything in our world, in our times, is standardized, right? So we know how much a meter is, or how much an inch, or a foot, right? And so forth, or a kilo, or a pound. All that is standardized by now. We don't have to be worried about trying to figure it out. So back in the day, they have all the things that they would approximate. You have, for example, measure of volume will be measured on, for example, a beitza, which means an egg. So it's mostly for liquids. You have a cubits and so many other things, right? So many other, or kezait means like an olive. And that was a measure also of volume. For example, for Yom Kippur, we don't eat. It's a fast day. So if you eat something that is up to or equivalent to zait, an olive, that little thing, you still consider that you are fasting. So all these measures were used for halachic decisions. So now here, and you will understand why I needed to go into this lengthy explanation of the word amot or amma, one arm, or amot, many arms. Because if you take that understanding, then amata, all of a sudden, it doesn't mean maids, but you see that she sent her arm. What does it mean that she sent her arm, right, to get the basket? In theory, it doesn't make any sense. But let's listen to the words of the rabbi, you will hopefully understand. It says, another interpretation of this verse, according to the Talmud and Rashi, renders the Hebrew word amata as her arm rather than her maid. Amata also means arm length. This is to teach us that her arm was extended for many arm lengths to enable her to reach the basket. So, what is the Talmud and Rashi are telling us here is that somehow there was a miracle. What was the miracle? That, she saw a baby on a basket and she felt the obligation to rescue that baby. She extended her arm, but it was not enough. The basket was further away from her. So because she tried to do it, she did everything she could, there was a miracle, and her arm extended miraculously to grab the basket and to bring it back to shore. Okay? Very good. Any questions about this? This is very important before we go to the next slide. Now, listen to this interpretation of Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk. Beautiful, a Hasidic interpretation. If Moses' basket lay beyond her reach, why did Pharaoh's daughter extend her arm? Could she possibly have anticipated the miracle that her hands will be extended for many arm lengths? There is a profound lesson here for each and every one of us. Often, we are confronted with a situation that is beyond our capacity to rectify. Someone or something is crying out for our help, but there is nothing we can do. By all natural criteria, the matter is simply beyond our reach. So we resign ourselves to inactivity, reasoning that the little we can do won't change matters. Anyway, but Pharaoh's daughter heard a child's cry and extended her arm. An unbridgeable distance lay between her and the basket containing the weeping infant, making her actions seem utterly pointless. But because she did the maximum of which she was capable, she achieved the impossible. Because she extended her arm, God extended its reach, enabling her to save a life and raise the greatest human being ever to walk the face of the earth. And I think it's beautiful for many different reasons. But number one, because the message of hope that we read here, that sometimes this text is trying to encourage us that even if something looks impossible, you still have to try, because you never know. This is something that we say to each other to encourage each other. When you said, try it, you never know. And this could be related to so many things. Could be from the lack of skills or resources to undertake a project or a new job, or to start a treatment that maybe the chances are not so great. But the Torah says here, and you should be able to hear the voice saying, why don't you give it a try? What do you know? Maybe it will work. Maybe you will succeed. Maybe you will learn the new skills along the way. Give it a try. Don't quit now. Okay? That's reason number one. Reason number two, that's why I like this story so much, is because the individual involved in this story was Pharaoh's daughter, that she wasn't even Jewish. To teach us that this principle is universal. It's not just a Jewish principle. And also the principle of doing whatever you can to saving a life. So I think it was fantastic what the Torah is telling us, and the way the Torah is encouraging us to do whatever we can to save a life and to help other people. Now, don't get me wrong, even if you translate the word amata as her maid. Her maid, amata, in the sense that we still use this word in English. When you have somebody that you trust, that is the one that help you, how do you call the person? Oh, my right hand, right? Even in English, it's still the concept of the right hand as helper is still valid. So then you can understand why the confusion in the Torah, that you don't know if he's talking about the right hand, meaning somebody else, or the proper hand of the person, right? The same thing that you will have it in English if you don't understand the context of the conversation. But that's what it is. So what I wanted to say is, even though this story happened before the revelation of the Torah, you can understand, or you can expect, that the concept of doing whatever you can to save a life, to help others, became Jewish law. And it is part of the 613 commandments. This is just a story to reinforce the concept. We don't learn the halacha, the law of saving a life, from this story, but this still comes to reinforce how important the concept is. So let me show you a little bit about this. The Talmud will say the following. Listen to this. From where do we learn that if one sees his companion drowning in the sea, or being dragged by an animal, or being attacked by bandits, he is obligated to come to his rescue? Fair questions. We already said, nice story that we read about Pharaoh's daughter, but that's not the source of the halacha. That's not the source of the Jewish law. So from where do we learn it? From where does the actual law come from? Okay? So the Talmud continues, from the verse from Leviticus, you shall not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. It's interesting. Pharaoh's daughter never heard about this, but nevertheless, the Torah is telling us that it's embedded in humanity to do whatever we can to save a life. Okay? She was rewarded with a miracle, but in worst case scenario, she still had her mates to go and rescue that basket, right? But it's interesting. So, but for us, we learn it from Leviticus, you shall not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. But the Talmud said, okay, I take that, but I believe that there is a different source that is also teaching us that we have to do whatever we can to save a life. So the Talmud continues. But is it derived from this verse? Is it not rather derived from a different verse? From where do we deduce that one is commanded to restore a life in danger of being lost? And the Talmud answers, from the seemingly extraneous words in the verse, and you shall restore it to him. And you shall restore it to him. I put here in brackets, his life, because this is coming from Deuteronomy. And in the original text in Deuteronomy, it's not talking about a life. The original verse in Deuteronomy is talking about a lost object. So let's say that you find a lost object. According to that verse, you have to do whatever you can to find the owner of the object and to return it. Okay? And why is this so important? Why is it so important? Because we learn a beautiful principle here, that the Torah sometimes will use the lowest possible category of something to teach us that every other category that comes above that will be included as well. What am I talking about here? If the Torah says that we have to do whatever we can to restore an object to the owner, even more so, there is even more reason to realize that we have to restore a life, that we have to preserve a life. When we applied that principle, it's called Kal Vachomer, usually translated as even more so. Okay? even more so. So again, going back to Deuteronomy, for when do we deduce? From where do we learn that one is commanded to restore a life in danger of being lost? From the verse that I said, "And you shall restore the object to him." So in an object has to be returned, even more so, with even more reason, a life. Okay? So we have two sources telling us that whatever Pharaoh's daughter did was amazing. Number one, from Leviticus, "You shall not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor." So she saw a fortiori. Yes, Rocky, that is another way of calling it, a fortiori. So, number one, she saw a baby in danger, so she didn't stand. She didn't stand idly. She tried to do something, right? And the second one from Deuteronomy, "And you shall restore the life to him." Now, interesting, because the rabbis say that we need two verses because we learn two different things from these two verses. So I will continue reading now from the Talmud. From the latter verse, I might think that it's only a personal obligation, but that he is not bound to take the trouble of hiring men if he cannot deliver him himself. Therefore, the former verse come to teach that he must. Okay, because the restoring the object is a personal obligation. Okay, if you find it, you have to find a way to restore it. So, but it said, but the first one, "You shall not stand idly," is telling you you have to do something, and that something might involve using your own personal skills, right? Or you have to find somebody else to do it if finding a solution for the person in danger could not be done with your own skills. Let me give you an example of this. And let's say that somebody's life is a danger, and it could be, for example, because a person needs surgery, like a very expensive surgery for some reason. Well, one solution will be, well, you said, "I'm a surgeon, so I'll do it," right? But most of us are not surgeons. So what do you do? Well, you help the way you can. It could be, for example, donating money towards the surgery so the person can have it, or maybe you know a way to expedite the surgery for the way. So it means that when you see a problem, it's not an excuse to say, "Well, I cannot solve that problem, so I'm out." No, you have to find a way. You have to find a way. So going back to the story of Pharaoh's daughter, how that is applied. So one way is that, she extended her arm, even though one explanation said that her arm miraculously extended so she was able to save the baby. Or the other one is that no, she couldn't do it with her arm. She tried to extend her arm. She couldn't do it, so she sent a maid who could swim, maybe, to bring the baby to the shore. So it's a beautiful thing. Saving a life in Judaism, it has at least two levels. You do it yourself if you can, and if you cannot, you find somebody else to do it. Sometimes it could be you see somebody in danger, you cannot intervene, but you call 911. Perfect example. If you keep driving like nothing happened, it's a violation of "You shall not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor," and so forth. Any questions? I will read the next one that is related to that, also from the Talmud. So here the Talmud will say, not only is himself required if he can do so without endangering himself, but even through the assistance of other whom he must hire. So to make it clear that if you can, you do it yourself. If you cannot, you find somebody else to do it. And the Rambam will summarize everything and codify everything in the Mishneh Torah, and he will say, anyone who's able to rescue and nonetheless does not, violates the prohibition of "do not stand idly." So this is a very important mitzvah. It's one of the 613 commandments, and sometimes we have to figure it out or to meditate how many times we actually violated this commandment by inaction. So it's a very interesting one, and this week's Parsha is a reminder of how important it is to get involved in whatever way we can. Okay, any comments? The chat is very quiet lately, other than Rocky that said a fortiori. Wow, very quiet. Maybe you will be more alive with the next topic that I have for you. That is one of my favorite. I thought about this many years ago, so I thought it was time to bring it back. And you will see in a minute what I'm talking about here. Okay, so we are going to jump ahead now to chapter 3. Chapter 3 of the story of Moses. Now, Moses, remember, he killed the Egyptian in Egypt, so he had to run away. He went to live with Yitro. Ariel Lee, we're paying attention to your wisdom, Rabbi. So nice, Ariel. Thank you so much. I'm going to highlight your comment. Thank you so much. Okay, so he has to run away from Egypt. He went to Midian, who is another land away from Egypt. There he met his wife, and who was Yitро's daughter. So now Moses has not only a wife and 2 sons, but also a father-in-law. Maybe a mother-in-law as well, but she's never mentioned. Galia said, you have a CPR certificate. Very nice. Everyone, I have a CPR certificate, but it's expired. I believe it's expired. I did it a few years ago, for sure, before COVID. So I think it's expired. Right? Yeah, we all did it here at the Shai Zedek. Anyway, let's go to the text. Now, Moshe is already living in Midian. He's having his own family away from Egypt. So we don't know how much he knows about the reality of all the Hebrews in Egypt, right? Eventually, God is going to tell him everything that is going on. But now, right here, it looks like he seems to be pretty clueless about the fate of his brothers and sisters. Now, he's pretty content, pretty happy in Midian, living with Yitro, his father-in-law, with his wife, his 2 sons, and his job is to be a simple shepherd. In Egypt, he was a prince, living in palace. In Midian, not so much, but he was happy. So this is what happened. Now, Moses, was tending the sheep of Yitro. By the way, you may have seen the name Yitro spelled in English is Jethro. Jethro is the name in English, just in case if you see it somewhere. So now Moses was tending the sheep of Yitro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. Leading the flock to the far side of the desert, he came to the mountains of God, to Horeb. Now it's very interesting. This concept of the mountain of God, where did it come from? Did he learn it from Yitro? So maybe this concept of the mountain of God was universal. And of course, we are talking about here Mount Sinai, where eventually the Torah is going to be revealed. So, and we know this, that it's very close from where Moses was living to this mountain, because eventually when the Israelites, huge jump ahead here. After the 10 plagues, when the Israelites left Egypt, they went to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, and that's when Yitro came to join them. So for Yitro was next door, the same way that for Moses was next door. He was living with Yitro. Next, he is next to the mountain of God. So, yeah. Shirley Judge, spoiler alert. Yes, sorry, guys. Spoiler alert. That is what's going to happen. But let's go back here. We are talking about he came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. The angel of God appeared to him in a fire blazing from the middle of a bush. Well, we all know the story, right? The burning bush. Here. He looked and he saw that although the bush was flaming with fire, yet the bush was not being burned up. Moshe said, I'm going to go over and see this amazing sight and find out why the bush isn't being burned up. When God saw that he had gone over to see, God called him from the middle of the bush, saying, Moshe, Moshe. And he answered, Here I am. Oh, actually, I have to do it the right way here. Hold on, guys. The right way will be like this. When God called Moses saying, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Hineni. He probably stuttered, right, when he said Hineni, because he had a stutter. But I won't do that. Otherwise, it will sound that I'm making fun of Moses. And yeah. So anyway, now, which is interesting about this, and it always amazed me, is that God didn't talk to Moses right away. God waited to see if Moses was curious about the event. Which makes me think, how many people before Moses walked by that burning bush and they didn't even notice it? Have you ever thought about that? Because the Torah is making a point here to tell us that Moses was amazed by the sight. And he decided to go out of his way to get closer to explore what's going on. So, and this is interesting because it happened to me once in Argentina back in the day. I used to take the bus to go to school with my brothers, right? And one day, coming back from school, I was looking outside the window of the bus, and I noticed on top of one of the houses, because in Argentina it's very common, there are water tanks. Because sometimes there is a problem with the pressure of the water, so most people will have these big tanks on top of the roof that they will collect water during the day, and then you can use it and you have good pressure because gravity is playing on your favor if the water gets accumulated, on top of the terrace. So it had a very unusual, very unusual shape. Was shaped like a boat, like a ship, right? Decorated and everything, and I never noticed it. So yeah, in Israel, Shelly, they also have the tanks on top. So I mentioned to one of my younger brothers. I said, "Look at that! There is this amazing water tank." And my brother said, "Yeah, it's been there for years." And I never noticed it. My brother did. He noticed it before. And I remember then it was very close to home. So I remember walking. No, actually I didn't walk. I took my bicycle. And I went there because I wanted to see more about it because I was amazed. It was beautiful to me. So I was wondering back then, how many people will drive by or walk by there and never notice that's beautifully shaped water tank on top of the building? And how many things have we missed in life because we don't pay attention to our surroundings? How many incredible sights and events we missed for not paying attention? And even if we pay attention, how many things we missed because we decided not to go out of the way to explore a little bit more? It's incredible. And I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about, right? And there are things sometimes we don't give ourselves the opportunity to explore around, to discover amazing things, right? That sometimes we have next door. And it happens when we take holidays and we go to other places and we are amazed. And then we are shocked that when other people come to our cities and our places, they are in awe about the beautiful things we have here. And then you said, wow, I live around all this beauty and I never notice it. So this is what happened with Moses. Only with Moses stopped and got closer and tried to understand better what was going on, God said, Moses, I like your attitude. I am God. And let me talk to you. And it's, yeah, Brenda, we're always in a hurry. Moses probably too. He was a shepherd, right? But nevertheless, he stopped. He stopped there, and that's when, God was waiting for that, because you can never create a deep relationship with God if you are not curious about God. In the same way that you can never create a relationship with another human being if you're not curious about the other person. Otherwise, it's all about you. It's all about you. When sometimes it happens with people are together, it's not working together or being kind of friend together for many years, and then one day you realize, I know nothing about the other person, because we are not curious about them. It's all about us. It's all about what they can do for us, instead of getting to know the other person. So we get to know the other person. So when God realized that Moses was such person, that he cared about the other person, it's when God revealed himself to Moses, right? But then there is something else. I want to skip this, because I want to show you the next one. Hold on. You see, the Midrash said, "You paint yourself to look. I swear you are worthy that I reveal myself to you." That puts it together beautifully. Yeah. But I want to go to the next verse, right after, when Moses gets close, and God says, "Moses, Moses," and Moses says, "Here I am." God said, "Up, up, 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 up. Don't come any closer. Take your sandals off your feet, because the place where you are standing is holy ground." Okay? You know that I always mention that the sect of the Karaites in Judaism, the ones it's a sect within Judaism that they rejected the Talmud. Okay, but they also have synagogues, but they have the tradition that they remove their shoes when they enter to the synagogue. Why? Because of this verse in Exodus. They believe that they are entering to holy ground, so they remove their sandals or their shoes before they enter. It's very interesting, right? So Rocky Pollack, you said here, in elementary school, all we were taught about Hashem was to be in awe, not to be curious or questioning. But that was certainly a 1950s. Well, yeah, no. We have to be curious. And I think that's why we study more. We come to classes because we are curious. We want to know more. That's the thing. We want to know more. Otherwise, as soon as you finish school, if you don't want to know more, you will never open a book. You will never study anything else. If you keep studying without any pressure, is out of curiosity. That's the truth, even if we are not aware of that. So let's go back to this. And why will God ask Moses to remove the sandals? How is that connected with being on holy ground? Who remembers this? From the last time I taught about this. Let me know. Who remembers this? I will give you a minute. Any takers? Otherwise, you just say no. Type no on the chat, and I will get the hint that you don't know the answer. Okay? Ariel says, some religions do that, removing shoes. I attended a service at a Hindu temple, and they do that there. It was interfaith service after Mumbai bombing. Okay, Muslims do the same, right? Yep. But the thing is, in many cultures, shoes, sandals, are considered impure. One easy explanation is because, who knows where were you, right? Whatever you go outside, sometimes is in this day and age, even though we know that outside the streets are dirty, they are like pristine compared to what used to be 2, 3, 5,000 years ago. Okay, the concept of hygiene that we have now didn't exist, so you will expect that a lot of things were there where people were walking. So okay, this is holy ground. Remove your shoes. But in Judaism, there is something deeper than that, And in order to understand why the shoes are dirty, we have to go all the way back to the book of Genesis. Okay, remember Adam and Eve, they sinned. They ate from the forbidden fruit. So now God is punishing them. And part of the punishment that God gave them was this. To Adam, he said, because you listened to what your wife said and ate from the tree about which I gave you the order, you are not to eat from them, the ground is cursed on your account. You will work hard to eat from it as long as you live. Okay? The ground is cursed. What does it mean? That every time we walk outside on the ground, of course now we have asphalt and tiles and things on the street, right? Back in the day, people used to walk on the ground all the time. And the ground, everywhere you touch the ground, is technically cursed territory. But here, Moses is not in cursed ground, it's in holy ground. So when you're in holy ground, you don't need to avoid touching it. That's one of the explanation of why we use sandals or shoes or runners, is so we don't touch the cursed ground. We need a layer of separation between ourselves and this cursed ground. And that's why we use the shoes. So in Judaism, this is something very profound, and we even have a proper way of putting our shoes and taking it off. You know that? And if you touch the shoes when you put it in and out, then you have to wash your hands. Why? Because they are impure, because they touch cursed ground. And now you can understand better why God said to Moses, remove your shoes, because you are safe here. This is holy ground. And please don't bring those already impure shoes into this place. So let's go to Talmud. The Talmud will say the following, talking about shoes and sandals and things. Listen to this, it's fascinating. Fascinating. Rabbi Yochanan said, as one dons tefillin, so should he put his shoes. You know tefillin that we put on the arm, and we have a way to do it, right? So, just as tefillin are worn on the left hand. Kind of. If you're a righty, you put it on the left hand. If you are a lefty, you put it on the right hand. But most people will put it on the left hand because most people are right-handed. So, let's continue with the Talmud. So too, one who puts on his shoes should begin with the left shoe. They challenge this ruling from the following Baraita. When a person puts on his shoes, he puts on his right shoe first, and after this, he puts on his left shoe. It looks like back in the day, oral law, there were two opinions, okay, conflicting, like most of the time, conflicting. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak said, one who fears heaven can fulfill both directives. And who was it that followed this practice? Well, one example was Mar, the son of Rabbana. What would he do? He will put on his right shoe, but he will not tie it. And then he will put on the left shoe and tie it. And then he will tie his right shoe. Thus, he will put on the right shoe first, as the Baraita directs, and he tied his left shoe first in accordance to Rabbi Yochanan's ruling. And this is pretty much, guys, what the more religious people do when they put on the shoes. You put on the right one first, but you don't tie it. Then you put the left and you tie it, and then you go back to the right and you tie it, and then you wash your hands because you touched cursed shoes. Okay? It's very, very interesting. So, and this bold Ariel Lee doesn't really matter if you're ambidextrous. You put the right first, left, tie the left, then the right, you tie the right. That's the way we do it. Okay? Now, the same principle is used for when we wash our hands. The procedure for morning netilat yadayim, for washing our hands, is as follows. One takes the utensil filled with water with the right hand and transfer it. So you take the empty thing with the right hand. Then you put all the water on the right hand. Okay, so it's full now, it's in your right hand, but then you don't pour the water. First, you pass it to the left. Thus, you will see the utensil to wash your hands has two handles. Have you ever wondered why it has two handles? To fulfill this, you hold it from one handle, you put the water in, then before you pour the water, you pass it to the left. Okay, then using the left hand, you pour the water first on the right hand. After this, he takes the utensil filled with water with the right hand and pours the water onto his left hand. And he should do this 3 times. Okay, isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? And you see, we learn all this from Moses' story and the shoes he has to remove at the time of the burning bush. And that's how we learn how to tie our shoes and how to wash our hands. Listen, guys, this is incredible. All the things that, this is the way rabbinic minds work, how they connect one thing to the other. I think it's quite amazing. Quite amazing. So why 3, said Shelley Church. The number 3 is very common in Halakha. It shows intention, right? Same thing that 3 times that we put earth on a coffin at the funeral. The number 3 is like when you want to show that you're not doing this by coincidence. You do it with intention. You always use the number 3. So this is another example that's why we use the number 3. Okay? Yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for connecting once again. Welcome back after the winter break. We are back in a roll with Torah L'Chaim with your host, Rabbi Anibal. It's a great pleasure to be here with you week after week studying Torah. So remember, if you missed any part of this class, don't worry, don't despair. This class is going to be rebroadcasted tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time, so you can watch it back to the beginning. So, yeah, there is always another opportunity to learn Torah. Okay, thank you so much for being there. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And if you want to know, tomorrow is my birthday. Okay, yeah, and it's so that's why I was supposed to lead Kabbalah Shabbat tomorrow, but it's not going to be me because I was going to be celebrating with family. Okay, so thank you everyone again for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe, be blessed, and hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.